this is the face of the most dangerous serial killer I've ever encountered. Now, in a special 2-hour episode, I'm going to take you on a journey into the darkest mind of all.
I'll rape your women, I'll rob your banks, I'll burn your churches.
How did he hunt in secret for so long?
Disappearances that are utterly unexplained.
How many did he kill?
How often does someone go missing out here, and how often are they found?
What's his M.O.?
Everybody after that, I got rid of them at night.
And where are the bodies?
The lake does not give up the bodies.
I've clocked up thousands of miles, chasing leads, following clues, talking to sources.
It's a hell of a coincidence.
My investigation has found something that hasn't been reported before.
I believe that I've got some answers to a baffling mystery. And I'm on a mission to reveal the truth.
I know your secrets, and they're about to come out.
I'm M. William Phelps, investigative journalist, and I have an obsession. Serial killer, cold cases.
Now, nearly 10 years later, investigators say they still need the public's help.
For me, it's personal. My sister-in-law was murdered, and her killer has never been caught. These killers are still out there. Their victims deserve justice. And just one new clue could make all the difference. I don't have a badge, but I do have something the cops don't have. Someone who understands the dark mind of a murderer.
As I started killing again and again, I saw it as a purpose.
Because he is one. Welcome to Essex, Vermont. The kind of place people move to escape the big city.
It's a quiet town. It's kind of off from any major interstates, so it's a quiet place.
Meet George Murdy, lieutenant in the Essex Police Department. Been here 29 years. He also likes the quiet life.
There are great schools, nice parks, you know, things that people look for when they're looking to move to an area.
George reached out to me back in 2012 and invited me up here to Vermont. Said he had a story to tell. A tale of murder and mystery that defies belief. It begins with the disappearance of a local couple in 2011, Bill and Lorraine Courier.
We got a call about 10 o'clock in the morning on June 9th from Bill Courier's sister. She worked with Lorraine at the hospital. Lorraine didn't come to work. She called Bill to find out why and found out Bill didn't come to work. That was really unusual because they'd both been working at their jobs for over 20 years. So she went to the house and discovered that the car was missing and called the police.
Bill and Lorraine Courier, aged 49 and 55. They just celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary, and now they'd vanished.
All the doors were locked. The car was gone. Then one of our uniformed officers looked through the garage window and saw that the window leading from the garage into the house had been broken. But other than that, nothing appeared to be disturbed.
Bill Courier worked at the University of Vermont as a lab assistant. Lorraine at a local medical center.
They were both hardworking people, both good employees, They were very close to their family. They were very proud of their house. They entertained family members, and they took a lot of pride in upkeep and making the place look nice.
Bill and Lorraine Courier were house proud. Hard workers, regular folks. Not the kind to take off on a whim.
We found things that concerned us. Medicine that Lorraine and Bill needed on a daily basis was still in the house. Bill's work clothes were still laid out. His wallet was there. Lorraine wears glasses when she drives. They were still there. They kept a gun in the house, and the gun was missing. So all this stuff together really sent up a lot of red flags.
Was it murder-suicide? No, not this couple. They were happy as can be.
After learning that this is very unusual behavior for them, I was concerned for their safety. I've been doing this for 29 years. I've never seen anything like this before.
8 separate searches are launched.
As you can see, it's about a quarter of a mile.
They find nothing. Then, police take a call from an eyewitness. He says he saw someone driving the Courier's car the day after they disappeared.
So he cooperates with investigators and gives a composite sketch of the person who was driving the car. It sounds ominous that the person driving the car, first of all, doesn't resemble Bill Courier, and second of all, he's the only person in the car.
But as the months pass, it remains the only lead in this case. Who is the man driving the Courier's car? No one knows. All that Lieutenant Murdy has is a missing persons case going cold and a very bad feeling in his bones.
There were, a lot of possibilities, and none of them were comforting.
Right.
My thought was, these people have been victims of a serious crime. I certainly didn't think that one had done anything to hurt the other one or that they had disappeared.
Lieutenant George Murdy is left to ponder the mystery of the Couriers. What he doesn't know is that the answers he's looking for are out there, hiding in the most unlikely place. 3,000 miles away. February 2012. In Essex, Vermont, Lieutenant George Murdy is trying to piece together a mystery. What happened to Bill and Lorraine Courier, a quiet married couple who disappeared from their house in June 2011 and haven't been seen since?
This was by far the most trying case I've ever had. It was an emotional roller coaster. You'd get a lead, you'd get excited that maybe you were going to solve this and find out what happened to Bill and Lorraine, and then it would turn out to be a dead end, and then you'd be discouraged. This happened time and time again.
Meanwhile, a whole continent away in Anchorage, Alaska, someone else is about to disappear. 18-year-old Samantha Koenig is working late as a barista in a drive-up coffee stand.
She was reported missing on the night that she actually went missing. Her boyfriend had come to pick her up from the coffee stand that evening, and she wasn't there.
The next day, Anchorage police review security camera footage and start to get very worried about Samantha Koenig.
Here's the thing. Samantha Koenig, just a teenager, just trying to earn some extra money. She's closing up for the night. It's cold outside, dark, lonely. The snow's piling up. People are driving by, not paying much attention. Their eyes on the road.
At about 8 p.m., a man turns up in a ski mask. Not unusual for Alaska when it's 12 degrees outside. Looks like just another guy stopping for a caffeine fix on his way home from work. He passes his travel mug and asks for a coffee. Sam Koenig turns back with a smile.
Turn the lights out. Now.
Only to see a gun pointed at her.
Turn around. Turn around.
He leans in the window and cable ties her wrists. Then he jumps in, grabs her, and marches her out the door.
A lot of people early on thought that she could be anywhere because the snowfall that occurred that night, you know, if her body had been placed somewhere even nearby, it could be very difficult to find until after some of the snow had melted.
3 desperate weeks later, her boyfriend gets a text message from her cell phone. Sam's alive. He's directed to a ransom note hidden in a local park. The note has a photo of her holding a recent edition of the Anchorage Daily News and a demand for $30,000 to be deposited in Sam's bank account. The kidnapper has her ATM card.
This case became very high profile very quickly. You know, her father held impromptu press conferences outside of the coffee stand and asked for his daughter back and made pleas to whoever had kidnapped her to bring her back or return her home.
The community rallies in support, quickly raising the cash and putting it into her account. And within days, 2 withdrawals using Sam's card are made in Anchorage. Police monitor every ATM in town, and a week later, something strange happens. Sam Koenig's ATM card is used again, not in Anchorage, but in Arizona.
They said that they didn't know who was making these withdrawals at these various places. They were always, 10, 15 minutes behind, and by the time they got there, he was gone.
The kidnapper is using drive-through ATMs. There's a hit in Wilcox, Arizona, then Lordsburg, New Mexico. 2 days later, a withdrawal in Humble, Texas. Surveillance video shows a man in a mask driving a white Ford Focus. It's a race against time. Can the police trace this white car and rescue Samantha Koenig?
So an all-points bulletin was put out throughout the Southwest and Texas, trying to catch this individual.
Right.
We believed him to be a white, muscular male over 6 feet.
Craig Warner is working as an assistant U.S. attorney in Anchorage when the hunt for the kidnapper is on.
We got a call indicating that a Texas state trooper had seen a tall, muscular white male in a white Ford Focus pulling out of a hotel parking lot.
In Lufkin, Texas, the trooper pulls the car over. It's a dangerous move. Because behind the wheel is a man who has anticipated the day when the law might catch up with him. And he's not planning on going quietly.
What's the problem?
Can I see your driver's license, please, sir?
But today, he doesn't have his gun on him. The license is from Alaska. The name on it, Israel Keys.
I think it was exceedingly dangerous for anyone to encounter Keys on the open road and try to arrest him.
Step out of the car, please.
I don't know that the officer necessarily realized the extent of Keys' dangerousness when he pulled him over, but he certainly put himself in danger by doing so.
Inside the car, police find Samantha Koenig's ATM card, her cell phone, and rolls of cash. But there's something missing. Sam Koenig, where is she?
At that moment, we went into overdrive, trying to find out if there was still a possibility to save this life.
But Israel Keyes isn't giving any answers.
The initial interrogation took place in Texas and was essentially fruitless. He told us nothing.
Extradited back to Alaska, Keyes makes an impression on prosecutors. There's something about this guy, something frightening.
Initially, he was withdrawn and cold and had a dark sensibility about him.
They don't know the half of how dark Israel Keyes is. But man, are they about to find out. March 26, 2012, Anchorage, Alaska. A young woman is missing, and a man named Israel Keyes is in custody. The charges are kidnapping and access device fraud. That means using a stolen ATM card. The FBI begins to get a rough picture of Israel Keyes. He's 34, leads a quiet life with his girlfriend and his 10-year-old daughter in Anchorage.
He worked construction jobs around town and spent a few years in the military. Hell, he even received a medal and got an honorable discharge. His only brush with the law? A few traffic violations, and that was way back in 2001. On paper, he's pretty normal. On paper.
The FBI raids his home, seizing a computer. They find evidence of online searches about the Sam Koenig kidnapping. When they show Keyes the surveillance video that places his truck at the coffee stand that night, the cards are laid on the table. We know you kidnapped Samantha Koenig, but where is she?
Keyes, after the presentation, sat there quietly and said nothing for 20, 30, 40 seconds. We just let the silence hang on him. And finally, he looked up and said, well, I guess I may as well tell you everything.
She's dead.
Keyes starts with the news they've been dreading. Samantha Koenig is long gone. Her ransom photo isn't what it seemed.
Keyes explained to us that Miss Koenig had already been killed when he took that ransom photograph. That he had used a needle and thread to make her eyes appear as though she might still be alive.
And Keyes didn't stop there.
He dismembered the body and dropped all of its parts underneath the ice of Lake Matanuska, about an hour north of Anchorage. In Alaska, you build a shelter around yourself while you ice fish. And so that's what he did. He built a shelter, and then he pretended to ice fish while he weighted down Miss Koenig's body and dropped it to the bottom of the lake.
And that's exactly where police divers find Miss Koenig the next day.
Anchorage police say they knew just where to look in Matanuska Lake. Within hours of their arrival, they had a body.
In the interview room, Keyes starts spilling even more details of his twisted plot. explaining how he took a terrified Sam Koenig back to his home and held her captive.
He told us that he had taken a bottle of wine from the house. And brought it out to the shed as part of his process. He had given Miss Koenig some water, but reserved the wine for himself.
And while he sips that wine, Keyes calmly tells Sam Koenig exactly what he is about to do to her. It's pure psychological torture.
He then sexually assaulted her and killed her by asphyxiation.
As Israel Keyes weaves a tale of horror for investigators, they can't believe what they're hearing. And he seems to be loving every minute of it.
It was very interesting to watch. His voice got very quiet. The silence in the room was palpable. You could cut it with a knife. I would say that he was reliving the experience and deriving a great deal of enjoyment from it.
Who or what have they got in this interview room?
I think it dawned on us all very clearly what we were dealing with. We were not dealing with a rational person. We were likely dealing with someone who had done this before.
And here's something even harder to fathom. While Keyes tortures, rapes, and kills Sam Koenig, just 20 feet away, his 10-year-old daughter and his girlfriend are sound asleep in their beds.
He had a long-time living girlfriend. He had his little girl who lived with him, and he was a fairly normal guy.
This is actually the boat that we're going on.
The morning after Sam Koenig's murder, just like that, Israel Keyes flicks the switch from sadistic killer to caring father. He and his daughter fly out for a vacation cruise in the Caribbean.
Did you get it all done?
Yeah. Look at the boat we're going on. Oh, pretty cool, huh?
While someone else's daughter lies dead in his tool shed. Her body kept frozen by the bitter Alaskan winter.
I don't think either his girlfriend or his daughter had any knowledge about who he was. In fact, he told us on a number of occasions that no one really knew him.
Keyes tells the FBI that he's been living a secret life for the past 14 years. And the secret is, he likes to kill people. His neighbors, his girlfriend, his work clients, they all think he's a regular guy. Hell, they all think he's a great guy. But he's not.
Over a decade of killing, he could be one of the worst serial killers I've ever heard of. There must be unsolved murders out there that Keyes is responsible for.
What we wanted was to resolve as many matters as possible and bring peace to families and communities that had questions about where their loved ones had disappeared.
Keyes says he'll cooperate. He'll give them some answers. Not because he cares, but because he wants to make a deal.
I don't know what you want. Tell me what you would want.
I want an execution date.
For you?
Yes. I want this whole thing wrapped up and over with as soon as possible.
Keyes wants a deal. Not to live, but to die quickly. And there's one more condition. He doesn't want the media to know the full story about what he's done.
I'm not in this for the glory. I'm not trying to be on TV.
Why? Because he wants to protect his 10-year-old daughter.
I want my kid to have a chance to grow up. She's in a safe place now. She's not going to see any of this. I want her to have a chance to grow up and not have all this hanging over her head.
Keyes has taken the first step in a merry dance with the FBI that will go on for months, in hours of interviews like this. For now, he'll give up just one of his secrets.
All right, I'll give you 2 bodies and a name, and that's all I'll give you today. If I get a cigar.
Keyes gets his cigar and begins guiding FBI agents through maps of a quiet corner of Vermont. Back here in Essex, the local lieutenant, George Murdy, he's working on the small town stuff. Car thefts, assaults. But in the back of his mind, he's been wondering for several months now, where are Bill and Lorraine Courier? And he's thinking, by the time I retire, this case will probably never be solved. But something happens. Just when all hope seems to be lost, the telephone rings. Spring 2012. It's been a very strange 10 months for Lieutenant George Murdy of the Essex Police Department in Vermont. In June 2011, he loses 2 of his citizens, Bill and Lorraine Courier. They disappeared from their home and are never heard from again.
I had run down some more leads that were dead ends. I was pretty discouraged at that point. I went home from work, told my wife, I said, I don't think we're ever going to solve this case.
Then the FBI calls.
Hello?
They say they've got someone who's confessed to murdering the Couriers. He's a serial killer named Israel Keyes, and he's in Alaska.
I was cautiously optimistic. The information was where the bodies could be found.
Keyes told the FBI that he dumped the bodies in an abandoned farmhouse, only a few miles from the Courier's home. George Murdy races to the scene. But when he arrives, the farmhouse is gone.
The building had been demolished a few months before I got this call in April.
The entire building, including the contents of the basement where the bodies were supposed to be found, has been excavated and trucked to a landfill upstate. There's only one other way to verify Keyes' story.
We want to try and get details that only the person who had been involved in this would know.
George Murdy will have to get on the phone with Israel Keyes himself.
He started out the conversation by telling me that he absolutely had no remorse for what he did. He wasn't sorry. He sounded like he would be discussing a fishing trip or a new car he bought, just that matter-of-factly.
Cold.
Cold. Occasionally he would chuckle too, which was really kind of sinister.
Keyes is telling the truth. He knows every detail about the Couriers and the crime scene. He explains how he stalked their home late at night, cut the phone line and smashed a window to gain entry. Then he stormed the house.
He rushes down the hall into the Courier bedroom. He's got a headlamp on, and he's holding a handgun. He ties them up with cable ties. He tells them that he's kidnapping them and that he's going to move them to a different location. They go along with that. He walks them into their car.
Keyes drove them to the abandoned farmhouse.
He brings Bill into the basement.
Oh, no!
Upstairs, Keyes sexually assaults Lorraine Courier. While he's doing that, Bill Courier manages to partially escape downstairs. When he's trying to come to the aid of his wife, Keyes shoots Bill Courier in the basement. There's some more activity with Keyes and Lorraine, who's tied upstairs. But then he brings her downstairs into the basement and strangles her to death there.
Keyes doused the bodies in drain cleaner, wrapped them in large plastic trash bags, and hid them under a pile of basement junk.
The folks that came to demolish the building said the smell of decomposition was so bad that they didn't go in, they didn't look further, and they demolished the building just on top of the garage and figured they would haul everything else away.
Lieutenant Murdy leads an exhaustive 11-week search through the landfill. But the bodies of Bill and Lorraine are never found. So why Bill and Lorraine Courier? What did they do to deserve this?
Will you look at a photograph for me?
Yeah.
Are those the two people you killed?
Yep.
Had you ever met them before?
Nope.
Just like Samantha Koenig in Alaska, Keyes had never even seen the Couriers before the night he launched his attack. Who he kills isn't so important to Keyes. But he tells police that he thinks very carefully about where he kills. He picked the Courier's house because they had no kids, no dog, and a garage that would let him sneak into the house. Keyes' attacks are intricately planned. He doesn't leave anything to chance.
The Courier case really illustrated that Keyes was a serial killer with a system.
One of the most organized, carefully focused serial killers in history. Just how organized will amaze even the FBI and completely shock everyone who knew him.
I just couldn't believe that this nice person could do such a thing.
You know, what's different about Israel Keyes, as far as being a serial killer, is the way he planned his kills. He sat down and he planned out a vacation. Wow, I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna camp here for a week. But I'm not gonna go fishing and boating and sunbathing. I'm gonna go hunting human beings.
His usual system was to travel far away from his home, use cash, turn his phone off, leave no record of his presence in usually a small town where no one knew him, and to abduct, kill, and then to leave, to be hundreds of miles away from the scene by the time that local authorities even knew that anyone was missing.
For the Courier murders, Keyes flew from Anchorage to Chicago, then drove a rental car 1,000 miles to Vermont. After killing them, he drove another few hundred miles to dump the murder weapon in a lake. Then he backtracked to Chicago and flew home to Alaska. He had only one focus after killing: do not get caught.
He ditches the battery to his phone, carries only cash, he drives for thousands of miles, he attacks at random. Who's gonna solve that?
The only murders that Keyes gave explicit details about were Bill and Lorraine Courier and Samantha Koenig. But investigators are convinced there are many more.
There is a history of this stuff. It goes back a long time. It's not something I've ever talked to anyone about.
Keyes dropped hints about at least another 8 murders in his hours of interviews with the FBI. He wouldn't give up the details of those crimes, but in all that talk, he did reveal many clues. Now, if we combine those clues with all the other information the FBI uncovered about Keyes' life, we might just get closer to unlocking his secrets. Years of travel records show that Keyes roamed all over the U.S. Fly in, drive for hundreds of miles, then fly out.
Just over my shoulder, Ted Stevens International Airport, Anchorage. This was Keyes' gateway to the lower 48, his hunting grounds. And on June 2nd, 2011, Keyes flew out of this airport. In his luggage, he checked his .22, all perfectly legal. He flew under his own name. And you know what? This displayed confidence. This guy thought he was uncatchable. And for a long time, he was absolutely right.
He prepared his murders years in advance, even burying caches of weapons for future killing missions.
From his time in the military, he knew how to maintain weapons effectively. He knew how to grease them so that they could be buried and still be in functional order when he dug them up years later.
Investigators found sealed 5-gallon buckets loaded with guns, ammo, rope, cable ties, trash bags, drain cleaner. Everything he needed to restrain, kill, and cover his tracks. He had at least 5 caches of these disturbing supplies hidden around the country, in New York, Texas, Wyoming, Alaska. And down this forest path in Essex, Vermont, just 2 miles from the Courier's house, is where he buried the kit for their murder, 2 years before he used it.
What is that murder kit here and the other ones spread throughout the country? What does it tell you about Keyes?
I think it's some insight into his organization and his planning, almost like some sort of military mission.
Right.
And it's remote and it's off a trail, so he'd probably be comfortable in an area like this as well.
All that travel, it's expensive. How does Israel Keyes pay for his killing missions? Investigators are shocked by the answer.
Everybody get down.
He robs banks.
Stay down.
He admits
Put
to
the money in the
holdups
bag.
in New York and Texas.
Now. Come on.
And security camera footage confirms it. Keyes seemed calm and subdued throughout his custody. For 70 days, he quietly obeyed orders, was friendly to his captors, played the role of Mr. Nice Guy. Then, on day 71, the other Keyes came out to play.
There was only one occasion where I was able to actually witness the physical anger and explosive potential of Keyes. And that was when he tried to escape from open court in a federal district court in Alaska, a court that was filled with U.S. Marshals and law enforcement. What he had done was work the connection on his leg cuffs for 6 or 7 hours until it got loose enough that he could pop it out. He then tucked it into his sock and no one noticed. Suddenly there was a burst of noise, and I looked up, and Keyes was attempting to run out of the courtroom. He jumped up and just exploded over the dais and tried to bowl over a collection of U.S. Marshals. He was hit after about 2, maybe 3 steps by about a 250-pound U.S. Marshal, and then immediately by 6, 7, 8 other people, and then tased repeatedly. He didn't get very far, but what I did notice was that even after being hit by the first 3 or 4 folks, he managed to lurch forward another 2, 3, 4 feet, sort of like a running back carrying the defense over the goal line. He was a physically powerful man, and seeing his explosive potential was a real shock. I think Israel Keyes was extraordinarily dangerous.
The thing I'm having trouble getting my head around is the scale of the double life Keyes led. A couple times a year, he's flying all over the country, robbing banks, burying murder kits, raping, torturing, killing, hiding bodies. Back home, he's a caring dad and a reliable worker. So what was the so-called normal Keyes actually like? I'm about to find out. I've tracked down a source here in Anchorage who knew Israel Keyes as well as anyone could. Keyes did construction work for him for 6 months.
I basically designed it, but he and I sat down and figured it out together how we wanted the layout to be, and then he built it. Maybe 5, 6 months from start to finish doing the whole thing.
My guy has asked to remain anonymous because, well, Anchorage is a small town, and what he's got to say might shock his neighbors. What was your first impression of him?
Excellent impression. He came across as a professional guy who knew what he was doing, showed up on time, obviously intelligent. He did good work. He inspired confidence completely. I got no red flags from him at all in terms of his work.
Another thing that stood out with Keyes, a physical and mental toughness. He was unwavering in his focus.
A guy who would put his head down and just, cut and saw and nail and build hour after hour after hour after hour. I never saw the guy taking a break. He wouldn't stop for lunch. He would just work straight on through.
This eyewitness can also verify that Israel Keyes would sometimes take off for short, unexplained trips.
Occasionally he would say to me, I'm going to be gone for the next 10 days. He would, say, I'm going to Texas, or I'm going to here, I'm going to there.
How do you feel now that, it's a good chance that one of those trips he took for 10 days, he killed somebody while he was gone? How does that make you feel?
It's bizarre, and obviously it's horrible. And, one of the things, of course, that you realize is that you're paying this guy to do a job, and he's using that money most likely to fund whatever it is that he was doing.
When you saw the news and it was definitely him, what was your first reaction?
Honestly, it was disbelief for a couple of reasons. One is that I just couldn't believe that this nice person, or I perceived him to be a good person, who cared about his girlfriend, who cared about his daughter, could do such a thing. It doesn't make sense, and I think we have this desire to try and get an answer. Who are you really? Why are you like this?
Right.
Impossible to understand, who he really was and what was really going on under the surface. It's a sad story.
And here's the kicker. This is how good Keyes was at presenting a friendly, normal face to the world. Any of us that met him, you, me, my source here, we would have liked him. What's more, we would have trusted him.
Honestly, my impression of this guy, before any of this came out, is that he's at the top 2% of humanity. He's reliable, he's friendly, he's a guy you can trust. I absolutely trusted him. If he had asked me for a loan of money, I would have given it to him. If he asked, like, can I borrow your house while you're out of town? No problem. He came across as likable, low-key, friendly, utterly reliable.
Smart, well-planned, efficient, self-reliant. It's a glowing reference for a builder. And it's exactly the same way Keyes conducted his work as a serial killer. By December 2012, Keyes had spent 8.5 months in custody, playing a bizarre game of cat and mouse.
I already know that you know where I've been for the last few years.
Keyes always flew under his own name, so investigators have all his travel records. They are desperately trying to find out who else he killed. While Keyes is desperately trying to avoid life in a supermax prison, he says he'll give up his secrets if they guarantee his execution within a year. If not, he'll do it himself.
The bottom line. So we already all know how this ends. Things don't go the way I want. I don't need you guys.
Just as Keyes promised, on December 1st, 2012, guards find him dead in his Anchorage jail cell. Israel Keyes, the meticulous murderer, has made his final, carefully planned kill.
I think it was a cowardly way out for someone who didn't allow any of his victims to go out so peacefully.
We don't know how many secrets Keyes took to the grave, but he's left us with some tantalizing and cryptic clues. Hours of interviews, pages of travel records. There are mysteries to be solved, families that need answers. We know he roamed America hunting for victims for over a decade.
And what we don't know is, how many people did he kill in that time? Who are they? Where are they? And that's what I want to find out.
This incredible story has only just begun. There were horrible, senseless murders. Samantha Koenig, 18. Bill Courier, 49. His wife, Lorraine Courier, 55. Chosen at random. Killed by Israel Keyes. Just for his idea of fun. At least those cases are closed. But before he took his own life, Keyes did hours of interviews with the FBI. During those, he dropped clues about at least 8 more victims. 4 in Washington State, 1 in New Jersey, the others in places unknown.
I'm in Anchorage, and I'm looking to analyze how and why Israel Keyes killed. If I can do that, I can apply that knowledge to some unsolved murders. Keyes admitted to 3, but if there's one thing I know about Israel Keyes, that's that he killed a hell of a lot more.
I've never seen a serial killer like Keyes. Keyes is very unique, okay?
Criminal profiler John Kelly also would not be surprised if there are even more victims. He says that with Keyes, anything is possible.
When I look at this guy versus other serial killers, he's like Attila the Hun. He's like a plunderer. I mean, you know, I'll come into your town, I'll kill your men, I'll rape your women, I'll rob your banks, I'll burn your churches. I mean, this guy is very different. Very, very evil.
Does the fact that authorities haven't found many bodies of his yet mean that he's some super intelligent serial killer?
I have to believe that Israel Keyes is one of the smartest serial killers I've ever seen. When you have a man that will put this kind of time into planning and hunting, this is a very, very methodical, organized serial killer. Very methodical.
Organized, methodical, meticulous. Words I hear over and over when people talk about Israel Keyes. And those words will help me on this journey to find his hidden bodies. They all point to carefully repeated patterns. Get a handle on those patterns, and we will be very close to unlocking his secrets. But these secrets, they won't come easily.
I think it will be very difficult to conclusively tie Keyes to individual missing people. He seems to have been, in most cases, pretty thorough in covering his tracks.
And it's more than just not leaving evidence behind. According to Keyes, most of his victims weren't even reported as murders.
My entire goal was to stay under the radar. For a lot of the stuff, I couldn't even find stories. There wasn't anything.
There's a clue. The victims I'm looking for, they won't be on the front pages. They certainly won't be classified as unsolved murders. They'll be missing persons, barely mentioned in the media.
All I can say is that unless I talk about it, you're never going to find any evidence. The more you investigate me and the crimes that I am confessing to, you're going to find that if I wasn't talking about those, you wouldn't have much evidence.
No bodies, no evidence. How do you solve murders like that?
So, Kelly, what in your mind fits with Israel Keyes?
Secluded areas, rural areas, hiking paths. He felt very safe, very at home in the wilderness.
Right.
And he liked to see somebody leave the pack. He liked to focus in on somebody who was just alone. If they're just alone, really, there aren't any other witnesses. Nobody gets to see them.
Israel Keyes grew up in Washington State. As a kid, he roamed the forests of Colville in the northeastern part of the state. He built this cabin in the woods when he was only 16. Keyes was comfortable in the wilderness. That was where he liked to hunt.
He would sometimes just go to an isolated place in the mountains or in the woods, and he would wait.
Most serial killers have a favorite type of victim, an age group, sex, even hair color. Israel Keyes took whoever walked into his trap.
And he told us explicitly, sometimes it's not what you were hoping for, but you take what comes across.
So searching for victim types won't move this investigation forward. It's all about the circumstances.
Well, what I would be looking for is disappearances that are utterly unexplained. Situations where a person simply vanishes, where there's almost no physical evidence of their disappearance, and where there is some connection to possible travel by Keyes.
And Keyes loved to travel. He lived in Anchorage from 2007 till his capture in 2012. During that time, he made 20 flights to the U.S. mainland, plus trips to Canada, Hawaii, Mexico, and even Central America. Did he kill every time? If we could solve even one more murder, could it be the key to unlocking the rest?
Just the amount of people this guy could have killed and the places he could have done it just baffles my mind. But you know what? Those victims, they deserve justice. Those families, they deserve to know.
The scale of this mystery, that's one thing. But the madness and horror, man.
It was the only time I ever saw him look uncomfortable.
I wasn't prepared for what I found. December 1st, 2012, Anchorage Correction Center. It's close to midnight. Israel Keyes has patiently waited months for this moment. All it took was one razor, left with him by mistake.
He liked the open road. He liked the feeling of freedom. He liked the feeling of control over other people. And in incarceration, he felt like he had none of those things. He repeatedly expressed his desire not to live in those conditions. And it turned out he was sincere.
So why was Keyes afraid of the Supermax prison?
He was such a free spirit. He had the freedom to run all over the country anytime he wanted, hunting and trolling for victims. And now he's facing the Supermax. And that's where the most violent, smartest criminals go. He would lose all his freedom. He would be specifically under the tightest control in the United States. And this was his biggest fear, that he would not be able to attempt suicide in the Supermax.
And what if he had walked into the prison where the serial killer Raven is held? A place where his awful secrets are all out in the open.
What do you think would have happened to a guy like Israel Keyes in the joint?
Well, he admitted to rape, for one thing. And he admitted to, he cut up that one gal there in Alaska. I think if he would have been put out in general population, he would have been dead within a year.
And Raven thinks that Keyes would have suspected that himself.
And if you've been in prison, you would know that this isn't a place that you want to come to on your vacation. You want to be somewhere where you're safe. And you're not safe in prison. Every time you turn around, there's always somebody there that may not like who you are just because you are who you are.
You constantly live in the shadow of being a serial killer, right, Raven?
Constantly, I have people talking behind my back all the time. You don't know if they want an autograph or they want to stick to the red with a blade. I tried to commit suicide before, and that didn't work out. Of course, I'm still here. So I wasn't very good at killing me, but I was very good at killing everybody else.
He spent 11 years crisscrossing America, killing at random, leaving barely a trace behind. 11 years of secrets, gone to the grave.
When Israel Keyes committed suicide, he escaped trial, he escaped prison, and he escaped the opportunity to clear up all those unsolved murders. But there's one thing he told the prosecutors in Alaska. Desperately, he did not want the details of his crimes to go public. He certainly didn't want TV shows like this one to be made about him. Well, Mr. Keyes, I got a message for you. And this is for the families of your victims. This is for the victims themselves, known and unknown. And wherever you are, in the hell that you're burning in, I'm gonna expose you. I know your secrets, and they're about to come out.
Keyes had secrets hidden within his secrets, and he loved it that way.
Talk with him and you'll get the, he was a nice, quiet guy answer.
He said absolutely nobody had any idea of the real Israel Keys. He seemed like a nice guy. He had friends. But one part of his personality didn't measure up to the other one. He was like two different people.
Right.
He kind of enjoyed the fact that while people are talking to Israel Keys the carpenter, that they don't know that he's Israel Keys the serial killer.
For criminal profiler John Kelly, it all comes back to a simple equation. Secrets equal power.
Keys is constantly playing this game. You think you know me, but you really don't. I know something you don't know. I'm fooling you. I have control over you and you don't even know it.
There's another person I can turn to in this investigation. Someone who knows all too well what drives a serial killer, because he is one. Raven. Maybe one dark mind can help me understand another.
Hey, listen, we're gonna get right into this, okay?
All right.
Now, do you enjoy these dark secrets? I mean, is this something you enjoy holding on to?
This is kind of like the real catch to the whole situation, Phil. We enjoy the idea that we are different than the other person. We hold on to the idea that we are different, that we've done something that you don't know we've done. Sometimes we're really great people. We get found out, we go down the soup kitchen and serve soup. The other days, we go down the soup kitchen and pick up victims.
Wow.
That's what makes having a Raven or a Keys living in your community so dangerous. Meet them on the wrong day, and it will be your last. Take a look at the street here in Anchorage where Israel Keys lived. It may not look too different from your neighborhood.
Imagine Israel Keys walking down this street. Just a regular neighborhood guy. Waving to the neighbors. Yeah, I'll come help you fix that deck next weekend. But inside, harboring the darkest secret imaginable. Playing with your kids. Talking to your wife at the mailbox. Imagine that. And everybody around here, they have no freaking idea.
And it's here in Anchorage that Keys finally overreached. Kidnapping Samantha Koenig, holding her for ransom, they were big risks that didn't pay off. In Anchorage, Keys broke one of his golden rules, killing too close to home and allowing the connections to come back to him.
Keys was a serial killer with a system that he violated in the instance of Miss Koenig, and it was really his laziness and sloppiness that led to him being caught.
You know, in my experience, criminals who think they're smarter than everybody else, that's usually what gets them tripped up.
Sam Koenig didn't deserve to die. But, and this is real hard to say, she didn't die in vain. If Keys wasn't caught, there's no doubt he'd still be killing. No doubt.
His planning, his traveling, out of sight, out of mind, being so organized, staying in the structure, being so disciplined, and as long as he followed those rules, his own rules, he may have never been caught. But he couldn't. He just couldn't pass up Samantha Koenig. And to be honest with you, this little girl here, I'm sad to say, gave up her life, but probably saved an awful lot of people because Keys was still young, and I think he was just getting started.
So here's one of the biggest secrets that's haunting me. Where did he hide the bodies? The FBI tried to get details out of Keyes by warning him that he could be tied to cases he didn't commit.
Local cops, I mean, if they start getting wind that they can close some cases by blaming it on you, they may do that and give you credit for things you didn't even do.
I don't think they'll go that far.
Yeah.
They gotta have remains at least.
He was very certain that no one would ever find the bodies of his victims. I'm looking at half the U.S. as a possible dumping ground. Where should I begin?
So how did Keyes dump his bodies?
I believe his motto was out of sight, out of mind. And the best predictor of present or future behavior is past behavior.
Anchorage police say they knew just where to look in Matanuska Lake. Within hours of their arrival, they had a body.
And we know for sure he used the lake with Koenig. I have to believe these bodies are in lakes or under the ground.
So do all serial killers follow a pattern? And if so, could that provide clues? What does Raven think?
Here we go back to why killers kill. They only do things that work for them. The first murder I got rid of the body at night. Therefore, every body after that, I got rid of them at night. It goes in answer with what I got away with the first time. There's people out there probably killed in the daytime. They probably continue to kill in the daytime because it goes in character with what they got away with. They believe that's how they got away with it because it happened a certain way.
So does that mean there's a strong chance Keyes chose a lake for Sam Koenig because he'd used lakes before? That's one clue. Now I have to work out where it fits into this mystery. And I've got another lead, an insight into how it all began for Israel Keyes.
There was things that I thought were normal and that were okay that nobody else seems to think are normal and okay.
On Dark Minds, I'm always on a quest. Usually it's trying to find the monster who took an innocent life. This time around, I've got my monster, Israel Keyes. Maybe, if I can understand where he came from, it'll help me figure out who some of his victims might have been.
Keyes had low regard for many members of his family.
Israel Keyes was one of 9 children. He was raised in an almost cult-like atmosphere.
His family were strongly religious, and that was something that he had utterly rejected as an adult. He was a committed atheist, and he had a pentagram and an upside-down cross branded on his body. He hated religion, and he especially hated Christianity.
He even planned to burn churches across the country. Growing up, Israel knew he was nothing like the other kids.
There was things that I thought were normal and that were okay that nobody else seems to think are normal and okay.
In this interview with the FBI, Keyes gives a chilling insight into the developing mind of a serial killer.
When I was 14, there were some friends staying with us, and there was a cat of ours that was always getting into the trash. I had a lot of guns, and I would always carry a gun, and I shot it in the stomach. And it ran around and around the tree, and then crashed into the tree. I actually kind of laughed a little, I think, but Then I looked over at everybody else, and the kid who was with me, he was throwing up. Like, he was, like, really, I don't know, traumatized, I guess you would say.
That reaction taught him a lesson that stayed with Keyes for life. He needed to hide his darkest impulses from the world.
This is textbook serial killer stuff. Torturing animals. We see it time and time again. Why do they do it, Kelly?
You know, as a serial killer mentioned to me a long time ago, was I said to him, how can you kill another human being? He said, no. He said, the secret is to start off with small live animals and get used to killing them and then work your way up to human beings.
So, Kelly, in a nutshell, why did he do it? Why did he kill?
He got a thrill out of it. He got excitement over it. He got a high out of it. He was addicted to it. Anything else was boring to Israel Keyes. If it wasn't murder and mayhem, it wasn't fun for Israel.
I know another serial killer who worked his way up to human beings. Raven. Can he see the difference between animals and people?
I hunted with a bow for a lot of years. And there's really no difference between the death of bad animals and the death of a human being. When I was hunting, basically hunting humans, it's the same thing. The only difference is that one's walking on 2 legs, the other's walking on 4 legs.
And there's my answer. People, animals, they're all just live targets to a serial killer. When it comes to publicity, most serial killers are like Raven. They seem to love the spotlight. But Israel Keyes, he was different. He didn't want his name in the newspapers, on the internet, or especially on a TV show like this.
The problem is nowadays, the more stuff my name is attached to, the more likely it is that somebody's going to try to do some kind of stupid frickin' TV special, or, you know how it is nowadays, like with all this true crime that people are obsessed with.
He told the FBI he was trying to protect his daughter from Googling him when she grew up. But was it more than that?
There's certain aspects of the things that I've done that I would prefer never became public. The details, certain details. To me, that's a major concern.
What are the details he was so concerned about? It's his secret shame. And I believe one reason why he went to such incredible lengths to cover his tracks.
My investigation has found something about Keyes that hasn't been reported before. Firstly, his sexual assaults didn't just target women. Keyes also raped the men he murdered too. And you know what? He was ashamed of that, big time. Secondly, the biggest taboo, Israel Keyes was a necrophiliac. He liked to have sex with his victims after he murdered them. And that was his biggest secret.
Former United States Attorney Craig Warner spent hours in the interview room with Keyes. When he saw the normally confident, controlling killer on edge, he knew something was up.
The one time that he gave us unflattering sexual details about himself was the only time I ever saw him look uncomfortable. He was extremely uncomfortable with relating certain details of some of his activities. It was a stunning difference from his usual demeanor.
I was able to confirm with a law enforcement source that Keyes admitted to having sex with the dead. And Lieutenant George Murdy of the Essex Police Department in Vermont gave me some more clues about this.
Did he talk about doing anything to Bill Courier?
He told us that he had plans for Bill Courier, but Bill ruined those plans, which angered him considerably.
He didn't tell you what the plans were?
No. Earlier, before he abducted the Couriers, he told me that he was planning on abducting and sexually assaulting a male subject. So I don't think even gender mattered to him. It was just the experience of what he was doing.
Key's drive was always sexual. His targets could be men or women. I feel like I'm closing in on this mystery. What do we need to find? A missing person in the wilderness. No body, no big media story around it. Key's in the area at the time. And I think I found someone who will lead me to that person.
This is a case that I think is extremely strong.
I've had some sleepless nights following the case of Israel Keyes. More than a few of them have been spent tapping away online. There are plenty of amateur sleuths on the internet these days, but I've met one who stands out from the pack. A mysterious woman named Molly Koenig.
This Molly's an interesting character. She kind of reminds me of Lisbeth Salander from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. She gets deep into the internet. She's not online buying shoes or books like other people. She's in the dark alleys of the hidden internet. She's finding caches of information few people can. And I like that about her.
Molly says she's got some explosive information for me. But there's a question I have to ask. I mean, she knows everything about the Keyes case. Why this obsession?
One of the reasons that I'm so interested in Israel Keyes is the fact that I might have had an encounter with him back in 2001.
Molly was living in Washington State at the time. Late one night, she was out driving on the Olympic Peninsula, not far from where Keyes lived.
It's very dark. There's not a lot of people out there. And I noticed a man in a truck. So he gets closer to my vehicle, and I notice his headlights in my rearview mirror, and then his headlights are gone. And it takes me a minute to realize that he is so close to my car that I cannot even see his headlights. He ends up passing me, slows down, and then comes to a complete stop. So I pull around him, and then he speeds up again and does the exact same thing. He does this 3 times total before the final time where he decides to stop in the middle of the road. So I end up having to come to a complete stop and watch him as he opens the driver's side door, steps out, and starts to gesture at me to get out of my vehicle. And all I can think at that point is, you know, I wonder what this guy wants. The man was a few years older than me. He was tall, I'd say probably about 6'1", 6'2", slender build.
Only years later, when she first heard about Keyes, did the penny drop for Molly. The location, the time, the look of the guy. It must have been Israel Keyes.
So I've decided that I wasn't going to find out what he wanted. So I pulled around him on the left-hand side, passed him on the shoulder, and went on my way. So he got back in his truck and followed me. And he got right up close to my bumper one more time. And then as soon as there were residences around, he pulled off to the side of the road and turned around and went back west toward Nia Bay.
How do you feel about it now? Molly?
I feel glad that I didn't get out of my car.
It's like that one split-second decision may have saved your life.
Exactly.
And if it was keys, it definitely saved your life.
Yeah, I've been much more cautious ever since that rainy night when I was 19.
Did you ever think about buying a gun and keeping it in a glove box?
I do carry a gun with me now. There's no reason for him.
Molly could have been one of Israel Key's victims.
Nefarious.
And now she's trying to solve the case of someone who wasn't so lucky.
So what do we have here, Molly?
This is a map that I made of Israel Key's known travels. Covers places that he flew into, places we know that he drove, the range that they had on the rental cars. You know, this guy was looking at probably the world as his playground, and he could have gone to any of these places and done anything. Just where do you even begin with something like that?
Have you personally been looking into missing people in these areas?
I have. I focused primarily on Washington because he's from Washington and traveled extensively throughout the state numerous times. Washington is perfect Keys country. There's a lot of secluded areas out there. There's a lot of forest. There's a lot of lakes. There's a lot of places that you can make people go missing from.
I mean, the Northwest in general is a serial killer paradise.
Right, and you even see that reflected in the number of serial killers that have been apprehended up there. You've got Bundy, you've got Ridgway, you've got Daryl Yates in Spokane.
Molly has conducted a meticulous investigation into Israel Keys for a book she's writing about him. She spent time with his family and spoken to people in his old communities of Nia Bay and Port Angeles, Washington. Keys lived and worked there from 2001 to 2007. He told the FBI he took 2 single victims in between 2005 and 2006. Molly's time on the ground in Washington helped her come up with a theory. A missing persons investigation that could be an Israel Keys murder case.
This is a case that I think is extremely strong. His name is Gilbert Gilman, and he went out to the peninsula around there. Keys is from up there. A lot of people will go missing when they're hiking or backpacking, especially in a place like Olympic National Park. But the thing that struck me was the fact that he was wearing flip-flops, he was wearing shorts, he wasn't planning on doing any serious backpacking or hiking or anything like that. He was basically going out for an afternoon stroll. He didn't have any of the usual things that would correspond with somebody who voluntarily went missing. He didn't have psychological issues. He wasn't having financial problems. He wasn't having relationship problems.
I'm thinking maybe he got lost. I mean, isn't it vast country out there, wild? Maybe, where was Keys at this time?
He actually, several days prior, had run a marathon in Port Angeles, which is 3 hours away.
There's Israel Keys' name. Can't be denied. 90th place.
Yep. So Israel Keys was not far away at the time that Gilbert Gilman went missing. He was maybe a 3 or 4 hour drive away. We know that he was working Monday through Friday, and we know that he had weekends off, and we also know that Gilbert Gilman went missing on a Saturday.
Wow. What are the chances of a serial killer and somebody who goes missing being in the same area at the same time?
It's a hell of a coincidence. Just everything aligns just too well for it to be a coincidence.
Could Gilbert Gilman be another victim of Israel Keys? I need to see more. I need to journey into the hunting grounds of a serial killer.
The lake is deep and cold, and the lake does not give up the bodies.
I've just met up with a writer named Molly Koenig. She knows more about the Israel Keys case than anyone I've met. And she's introduced me to a case that could well be another notch on Key's deadly belt.
This is a case that I think is extremely strong. His name is Gilbert Gilman.
Gilbert Gilman went missing from an area called the Staircase in Washington State's Olympic National Park. Now this is wild country. I'm meeting with Detective William Adam from the Mason County Sheriff's Office. His office handled the Gilman case.
Family members had actually reported him missing. He was supposed to have been gone on just a day hike. He said he was going to be in the Staircase area. His car was found in the parking lot.
A park ranger actually noticed Gilman turn up that day. He was hard to miss, driving a sporty convertible, music blaring.
Hello. Mind turning the music down?
No, not at all. And not looking like your typical hiker.
He was wearing flip-flops, shorts, Hawaiian shirt. A lot of people from the city, they believe that they can just follow the trail and just to wear very light clothing, but they don't realize that the weather can change in an instant.
But I think Molly is right on this. He was just out for a stroll, not a hike. I've learned that Gilman wasn't your typical city slicker. The guy had elite military training. A former paratrooper, he had combat experience with the 82nd Airborne Division and was awarded 2 Bronze Stars. He would have known you don't hike too far here in flip-flops. He was last seen on Saturday, June 24, 2006. The search for him began 3 days later.
It was a full search and rescue mission with a lot of what we call ground pounders, people on their feet in search teams, searching all the trails, looking for Mr. Gilman.
6 days they searched. Helicopters and planes with heat-seeking cameras. Search and rescue dogs. Nearly 50 people. The weather was warm and clear. They found nothing.
How often does someone go missing out here, and how often are they found?
We get reports of anywhere from 12 to 24, a couple dozen a year.
And out of those, how many are never found?
Very rarely. We usually find them.
Every way you slice the Gilman story, it's odd. He pulls up in the parking lot, rock music blaring, Hawaiian shirt, shorts, flip-flops. He has laundry in his car. He has plans to meet somebody later. Yet he comes out here, the river here, dense forest, and he vanishes. Where'd he go? Is it possible that Gilbert Gilman could be the victim of a serial killer who lived in the area?
There's always a possibility. I'm never going to, say no on that. There's always a possibility that some foul play could have happened to Mr. Gilman.
And I'll take it one step further. It's plausible. Keyes told the FBI that his other victims weren't reported as murders. They were missing persons. And they only got low-key coverage in the media. Plus, he never left clues. No bodies, no evidence. The time frame fits. The window of opportunity for Keyes fits. Gilman checks every single box.
Anybody that's in any kind of secluded area has to be a possible victim of Israel Keyes. I mean, if they're missing and they can't be found and the search has been done and dogs have been brought in, something's amiss here. Something's awry.
Keyes said he killed 4 people in Washington. A couple and 2 separate individuals. He also said he dumped the two individuals in lakes. Keyes eventually confirmed to the FBI that this lake holds a body. Lake Crescent. The road to his former hometown of Neah Bay runs along its shores. And it's just 2 hours north of where Gilbert Gilman went missing. Gordy Simpson has lived around here all his life.
Really? So, Gordy, tell me about the lake itself.
The lake is 5,000 surface acres, 9 miles from end to end, and 650 feet deep at the deepest spot.
Like all the locals, Gordy knows one thing. Lake Crescent keeps its secrets.
If you were to dump a body in this lake, would it ever be found?
No.
Why?
Too deep. Deep and cold. Once it goes down, it's not going to come back up. There's many bodies that have been drowning victims and other bodies that have been put in this lake, and the lake does not give up the bodies.
Below me is the deepest part of Lake Crescent. 650 feet of cold, dark, murky water. Can you imagine weighing down a body with anchors, coming out here maybe at dusk or at night, and dropping it down here? This is undivable water. Divers can't go down that deep. If any of those victims are down there, we'll never know.
Is the body of Gilbert Gilman down below? Or is it someone else? My search may not end here. Have a listen to this FBI recording.
You guys know about Lake Crescent in Washington? How deep is it? I think that lake is 500 to 700 feet deep. They've never been to the bottom of it. There's people who've gone off that lake and they still haven't found their cars or anything. And that's the lake? That's one of the lakes.
He says that's one of the lakes. There's also a deep lake right here where Gilbert Gilman went missing.
I mean, this is the ideal landscape for Keyes, to sit and wait and choose that victim that he loved. But then yet we have a good dumping ground for Keyes also, the lake. He admitted to dumping 2 bodies in a lake in Washington. And you know what? What's right in back of me? A lake in Washington. And right up here, that's where Gilbert Gilman went missing. So for me, it adds up.
Lake Cushman goes down to 115 feet. That's plenty deep, but not too deep to dive. I've got to ask, could an underwater search of this lake bed solve just one Keyes mystery once and for all? And will that unlock the others? Here's where you can make a difference. We've nailed down the approach that Keyes used in his killing.
People that have disappeared in areas or towns where we can put him, where we know where he's been.
Now it's a matter of getting your help to see which missing person cases across the country fit the pattern.
Over and over, everyone that I've spoken to has said, give it to the public. If there's answers out there, the public can help find them. And I believe that.
But we need to move quickly before these cases go cold. Can you do what Molly did? She was just focused on Washington State, and she came up with Gilbert Gilman.
Washington is perfect Keyes country. Who's familiar with the area?
Keyes hunted in many other places, maybe on your home turf. He was in Texas, Wyoming, California, New York, New Jersey, Arizona, Vermont, and more. Did a loved one or someone you know go missing when Israel Keyes was in your area? Or have you encountered him yourself?
He's a large, intimidating man. He was about 6'1". He probably weighed 195 or 200 pounds.
Did he pass you on the trail? Flash a smile in the parking lot? Ask for directions? We've got Key's entire known travel history on the Dark Minds website, plus contact details for the FBI. Take a look and see if you can help.
You know what worries me? Is that Key's killed for over a decade and nobody knew. How many other killers are out there in that league? Who are they? Where are they? If Key's did it, I'm sure there's others doing it. And that scares me.